So you might be thinking, what could a French philosophy book from like 70 years ago possibly tell us about life in Taiwan today? Well, as it turns out, pretty much everything. Today, we're diving into Simone de Beauvoir's masterpiece, The Second Sex, but we're not treating it like a history lesson. We're using it as a superpowered lens to see the subtle, complex, and often unspoken gender dynamics that are shaping Taiwanese society right now.
If you look at the headlines, Taiwan is a real leader in gender equality. We've got progressive laws, high numbers of women in politics and business. And yet, for so many of us, doesn't it feel like something's unfinished? Like for all the progress we've made, there's this deeper, invisible inequality just humming beneath the surface. Well, that's the exact feeling we're going to unpack today. To really get to the bottom of this halfway there feeling, we've got to go back to the source. See, Simone de Beauvoir wasn't just an activist. She was a philosopher asking a question that would change the world. Why? Why is it that in almost every culture throughout all of human history, woman has been defined as the second sex? And her answer was, well, it was a bombshell. She argued that one group, and historically that's been men, gets to define itself as the norm, the default setting for a human being. This is what she calls the subject. But here's the catch you see on the screen. To be the subject, you need an other. And in this setup, woman isn't defined by who she is, but always by who she is in relation to man. She becomes the object to his subject, the secondary character in the main story. Okay, so this whole subject-other thing creates these two totally different paths in life. On one hand, you've got transcendence. That's our basic human drive to, well, do stuff, to create, to build, to have big projects, to shape our own futures. It's the path of freedom. And then there's immanence. That's the total opposite. It's being stuck in place, just maintaining things, trapped in the endless, repetitive tasks of daily life. It's the trap of being an object. And de Beauvoir's whole point is that the tragedy of women has been to be systematically pushed away from transcendence and funneled into immanence. So the big question is, why? Why does this happen? Is it just, biology? Are we just wired this way? De Beauvoir's answer was a huge, emphatic no. In what became her most famous argument, she takes apart, piece by piece, the idea that a woman's destiny is just locked into her body, her mind, or her bank account. And right here, this is probably the single most important sentence in all of modern feminism. One is not born, but rather becomes a woman. Now, she's not saying biology isn't real. What she's saying is that the idea of woman, all the baggage, the expectations, the limitations that come with that word, that's something we made up. It's a social construct. So first up, she takes on biology. Her point is, things like menstruation or average differences in physical strength, they're not inherently bad or good. They're just facts. It's society that slaps a negative label on them to justify keeping women in a certain role. And she made this point way back then. In our modern world of technology, pure physical strength just doesn't matter as much, which makes a lot of those old excuses totally obsolete. Next in the firing line, Freud. She totally flips his famous idea of penis envy. She's like, it's not about anatomy, guys. It's about power. It's a protest against being treated like an object. It's a desire for the freedom and all the privileges that society just hands to men. And this is where she points out the ultimate catch-22. When a woman acts like a full human being, ambitious, driven, she's just accused of acting like a man. And finally, she looks at the economic argument. While she agrees money is a huge part of it, she says it's not the whole story. See, unlike a class of factory workers, women aren't this separate, unified group. Historically, their main ties have been to the men in their own families and social classes, their fathers, husbands, and sons. And that connection has made it really hard to form a single, unified we to fight back. Okay, so if you're not born a woman, but you become one, how in the world does that actually happen? Well, de Beauvoir says this whole process, this gentle, constant nudge toward becoming the other, starts literally from the moment you're born. I mean, just think about it. The way we raise kids. A boy is pushed to get out there, climb trees, explore, be independent. His body is a tool for acting on the world. He's being trained for that transcendence we talked about. But a girl? So often, she's praised for being pretty, quiet, nice. She's handed a doll, basically a little version of herself to take care of, which teaches her that her job is to be an object to be looked at and cared for. She's being trained for immanence. And it's not just toys, right? our whole culture hammers this home. Think about all those classic fairy tales. What's the message there? A woman's biggest goal isn't to go on an adventure herself. It's to be pretty and patient enough to get chosen by a prince. Her happily ever after is a reward for being passive, not something she goes out and builds for herself. Okay, so that's the theory. It's this incredibly powerful toolkit de Beauvoir handed us 70 years ago. But the real question is, does it actually hold up today? Right here in modern Taiwan? Let's take these ideas, subject, other, transcendence, and immanence, and put them to the test with some real-world data. So one of the most obvious places we see this is what economists call value discrimination. And this is sneaky. It's not just about paying a man more for the exact same job. It's about how entire fields, the ones dominated by women, are just paid less. Period. Think about it. Why does a field like nursing, which requires incredible skill and education, often pay less than a male-dominated field like engineering? That's a textbook example of women's work being treated as less valuable, as other. And this chart, this shows you exactly what that looks like in real numbers. Taiwan's gender pay gap isn't just a number on a spreadsheet. It's a real-life barrier. It hits right at the heart of what de Beauvoir said was the absolute #1 step to freedom, economic independence. All right, now let's talk about the top jobs. That glass ceiling, that invisible wall that just seems to stop women from getting to the very highest positions. De Beauvoir would have a name for this. It's a perfect example of what she called frustrated subjectivity. That feeling of having all the drive and talent of a subject, but having society constantly block your way to full transcendence. And boom, this number just makes it crystal clear. Take a look at the percentage of women in top corporate leadership here in Taiwan. It's a hard number that shows you the limit. It shows you exactly where that path to transcendence gets blocked, keeping the highest levels of power reserved for the default subject. But here's the thing. Even for the women who do manage to break through that glass ceiling, that trap of immanence, that endless repetitive work, it's waiting for them at home. Look at this chart on unpaid labor in Taiwan. It's the classic second shift. The burden of housework and childcare still falls way more heavily on women, draining the time and energy they could be using for their own transcendent projects. This is what's so wild. When you put it all together in a table like this, you see how perfectly these very modern Taiwanese problems fit right into de Beauvoir's 70-year-old framework. It's incredible. Let's just run through it. The pay gap, that's her economic subordination. All that extra housework, that's a direct entrapment in immanence. The glass ceiling, that's frustrated subjectivity. And even with so many women in politics, she'd call that an abstract freedom that isn't totally real until you have the economic power to match. Okay, so that's the problem laid out pretty clearly. It can feel a bit depressing, right? But de Beauvoir doesn't just leave us there. She doesn't just describe the prison, she actually hands us a key. Her goal isn't to flip the script, but to tear it up completely and build a world based on real, mutual respect. And she lays out 3 really critical steps. First, and this is the big one, economic independence. Meaningful work is the key that unlocks the door out of that immanence trap. Second, you have to consciously reject all those cultural myths that tell you your only purpose is to find love and surrender yourself to it. And third, and this is huge, you've got to build relationships on what she calls reciprocity, where both people see each other as free and equal individuals. And this quote, this just says it all. It completely redefines love. It's not about one person surrendering to another. It's a partnership between 2 free people, a love where, and I'm quoting here, neither would give up transcendence. Neither would be mutilated. Wow. A love where nobody has to make themselves smaller so the other person can feel bigger. And really, that's the end game here. It's not about women becoming more like men. It's about getting to a point where those labels, masculine and feminine, just lose their power to define and limit us. It's about building a world where your body is just a fact about you, not your destiny, and where those roles of subject and other just fade away, leaving every single one of us free to create our own lives. So this all brings us back to you, to us. We've seen how these big ideas shape our society, but the truth is they play out in the small moments of our everyday lives, at the office, with our friends, in our own families. So the question I want to leave you with is a personal one. In your own life, how can you start to challenge these old roles of subject and other? How can you, today, help build that kind of true mutual respect that de Beauvoir was talking about?